This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
Gut health is so important because the gut is central to all disease and health.
Number one, just our quality of life.
Child had severe behavioral problems, as well as gastrointestinal problems.
I felt no anxiety, just felt calm and joyful.
And I started exploring what exactly was wrong with that lifestyle.
That has such a repercussion in such a positive way in the world. I'm a better mother, I'm a better friend, daughter, wife, all the roles that I play.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the health journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? In season 1 of The Shift, we explore the fascinating field of gut health and help you discover what is really going on with your digestion, microbiome, and health.
The gut is amazing.
Changes our concept of the human body.
Become useless to the healthcare system.
We're always shifting. Your genes are shifting, your microbes are shifting, everything is shifting.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift.
Gut health is everything. It's where everything starts. It's where the inflammation of the system starts. It's where the gut-associated lymphatic tissue has basically 70% of your immune system lined up at the walls, processing who comes in and who comes out. And it's how you process energy. It's how your liver interacts with the environment. It's how your hormones interact with the environment. There is much more happening at the gut than we ever knew. And at the gut level is where disease manifests. And so, all good doctors at this point are looking at the gut first for health.
Hi, my name is Katherine Maslen, and I'm the host for this docu-series, The Shift. Throughout the next 12 episodes, I'm going to take you on a journey of discovery. It's about shifting your health and your life, from where you might be stuck to where you want to be. In season 1 of The Shift, we dive into the fascinating field of gut health. Why gut, you ask? Well, as you'll discover, the gut is central to everything. It is connected to every system and every cell in your body. It's also the cause of the most issues for people when it comes to their health, whether they realise it or not. In this episode, we're going to explore some concepts around the gut and give you a taste of what's to come as we move through the series. In The Shift, we have 24 experts that have given us their time and expertise around all things gut health. My team and I have meticulously distilled this information down to the very best parts, and the end result is designed to give you the insights and information that you need to make your shift. You heard from Doctor of Chinese Medicine Pedram Shajai at the start. As we move through, I'll introduce these amazing individuals to you, and by the end, I'm sure you'll be familiar with them all. Here we have Christine Hassler, an author, speaker, and emotional wellness expert from California.
Gut health is important for so many reasons. Number one, just our quality of life. When our gut is healthy, we have so much more energy and so much more clarity. I know for me, after I really healed my gut and worked through SIBO, I could think more clearly again. I was far less irritable. So many people have irritability, depression, kind of mood disorders, and they're medicated for their mind, but really the problem is in their gut. And so gut health has a direct correlation to our mental health and how clear we are and how calm we can be. It makes us able to enjoy life more. Life is a lot more enjoyable when you're not either running to the bathroom with diarrhea or constipated. It just you actually feel alive and good in your body. You have a much stronger connection to your intuition as well when your gut is clear. You age a lot more gracefully. So many diseases these days are caused by inflammation, and so much inflammation starts right in the gut. Sexually, your life changes because your gut flora, especially for women, impacts your vaginal flora. So many women that have infertility or problems with their period or aren't enjoying sex, a lot of that is related to gut. So it impacts your sex life as well. I mean, I honestly can't think of anything your gut health doesn't impact, because also that's your personal power too. So if you're debilitated in your gut, then you're not going to feel in your power, and that's going to impact your ability to step into your purpose and to make money doing what you love and to feel like, you know, you're really rooted in yourself and you know who you are and you can take care of yourself.
Dr. Marvin Singh is someone you're going to become very familiar with as we move through the series. He is our resident gastroenterologist, so he knows a thing or two about gut health.
Gut health is so important because the gut is central to all disease and health. Thousands of years ago, Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut, and he didn't probably know exactly what the heck he was talking about, but he was spot on with what he said. Gut health is so important because gut health really means microbiome health. Microbiome health really means how you're living your life, because how you're living your life affects all of that. And those same things that affect your gut also affect your DNA and epigenetics and what genes turn on or off. And so it's almost a magical thing that if you focus on what can affect or impact your gut, you're actually also doing things that can affect how genes are expressed and how you feel and how you experience life. And that's how you optimize things the best.
Hippocrates is the founder of modern medicine. He did indeed say that all disease begins in the gut, and this is something that myself and my fellow naturopaths live by. Next, we have nutritionist Jenny Tishy from London. She is also known as the Lunchbox Doctor and is well known for her campaigns to feed kids better lunches in the UK.
Do you know, it's funny, but when I was training in nutrition, I started training in nutrition in 2003 and I completed my degree in 2009. And we didn't touch on gut health a huge amount. And I understand why, because that's when a lot of research was just coming out and we were just starting to understand more about the connections between gut and other elements of the body. But it was actually during that process that I started to look at my own gut health and started to do some testing. And that's what made me want to go a little bit further and understand more. And certainly having wanted to understand more, having understood more, I realised how connected gut health is to every aspect of our well-being, or so many other aspects than one might consider. It's not just about having poor digestive health. But my real passion comes in trying to make sure people understand why and what they can do about it. Because we do have this sort of window of opportunity, I believe, which is to get it right, you know, from pre-birth through to birth and from birth through to when children go to school. That's our sort of prime window of getting it right. And how many parents have time to get that education then? They don't. So I'm on a bit of a mission to try and help educate people, but not in a finger-pointy way. It's more of a, this is how it could be done way.
Well, the gut is really the root of the tree, and we are only at our infancy of knowledge of the digestive tract. I can't wait to see what our scientists discover about the gut in the coming years and decades. But what we know about it to date is that it is so fundamental for health, for life, that, you know, we put so much focus on the brain, but really the gut is our second brain, and we should really be loving towards it and careful of it, because we don't want to end up with such poor diversity with our microbiome and our gut health that we have very sick generations to come. So, you know, we owe it to our future selves to focus on our gut health so that we can have healthy human beings for years to come.
That was Rebecca Coombs. Rebecca has been on her own personal gut health journey for years and is the author of 4 SIBO cookbooks. SIBO stands for Small Intestinal Bacterial Overgrowth, and we're going to look at it more later in the series. Next, we have neurologist Dr. David Perlmutter. I wanted to know what David thought about gut health.
Well, there has been some research done by a doctor who really has made it very clear that gut health matters. I don't want to say more than everything, but certainly matters a lot. He recently published, and his name is Dr. Hippocrates. So the point I'm making is this is something that's always been known. And it's only just recently that suddenly doctors involved in cardiovascular health, in brain health, in joint problems, skin issues, are beginning to turn to the gut and recognize that this is where many of their pathologies have their origin. As such, empowering them with far more tools in their toolbox. So we're really realizing that this relationship that is so pervasive throughout the living kingdom, throughout history, is profound and really offers us up some incredible opportunities.
As David pointed out here, the concept of the gut being important is not new. It's just that the Western medical model has not acknowledged this. Things are slowly changing. We're beginning to see some doctors that are adopting a more holistic stance, talking about the importance of gut health. One of these is Dr. Vincent Pedre, an integrative doctor from the US. I asked him why the gut is ignored so much in the Western medical model.
The way that you learn gut health in Western medicine, it doesn't really differentiate all the details of why people are sick. So you kind of hear all these symptoms that they all sound the same. Intuitively, I knew that they were being caused by different things, but you're not really taught to figure that out. And they didn't have the language or the understanding. So it wasn't until I went and started training in functional medicine that the importance of the gut and the microbiome and all that, and it started just making a lot of sense. And I thought, well, this is really interesting because this has been, to me, one of the most challenging things to treat in patients because I just didn't have a toolkit for it. And now suddenly I was given a toolkit to treat patients with gut issues. And so I thought, well, this is really fascinating. I start helping people with their gut issues. They come in and I get them better. They refer a friend refers a friend. And from there, it just kept growing and growing. It wasn't that I was trying to be a gut expert. I was just doing what I enjoyed.
And why do you think that in conventional medicine, they don't look at the gut in this holistic way, or they sort of, it doesn't get that attention that it deserves?
The problem, again, is that top-down approach. It's the disease-focused approach, and it's really dictated by medication. So the solutions are dictated by what medications are available to solve a problem. And there aren't a huge amount. I mean, there's way more medications now, and there's a lot of biologicals and things, very expensive medications that you can give people for gut problems. But they don't turn it around and think, well, the biggest thing that's going through your digestive tract is the food you eat. So could the food you eat have to do with the health of your gut? And how about the microbiome? Highly unappreciated, now considered another organ of the body or an endocrine organ, whatever you want to call it, because it's so metabolically active that we couldn't survive without our microbiome. It's such a difference in the approach, looking at the roots and understanding why the tree is sick rather than trying to paint the leaves green when they're looking ill by using a medication as a Band-Aid.
Join the conversation about gut health at theshiftclinic.com/group.
The Shift!
We're going to explore this concept of treating top-down versus bottom-up as we move through the series, and how it's one of the fundamental issues with conventional healthcare. Summer Bock is a herbalist and fermentationist who you'll hear from throughout the series because she knows a lot about gut health. But first, I wanted her to share her personal story about her healing journey and how it got her interested in working in the field of gut.
I didn't really know that I had any health issues at all until I was 5 days in on a cleanse. I was in herbal medicine school, and they had us do something similar to an elimination diet where I was just eating white rice, vegetables, and turkey. And literally on day 5, I felt like a wool blanket had been pulled out of my brain, and I felt amazing. And I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, this is how normal people feel. This is how normal people function, you know? I felt clear. I felt no anxiety and just felt calm and joyful, like this very unusual feeling for me, because up until that point, I was exhausted all the time. I was always anxious. I was just kind of like on edge, but I didn't know it because I had never felt this way. So I literally spent the first 21 years of my life being in some awful state and had no idea. I mean, it blows my mind even to this day how many people I look around and I'm like, you might be sick and you don't even know it because you've never experienced what it feels to feel incredible. And it was that experience, it kept going, for many, many days after that I felt great. And it really was okay, I have to seek a way to feel this way all the time. And it just wasn't really sustainable for me to eat exactly that way forever, and there were some other deeper imbalances going on. And then I went to college, later and got super stressed out. I was going for pre-med, and really the stress totally impacted my health to the point where a lot of these issues that I had exacerbated. They got way worse before it got better. I had major histamine issues. I was getting hives and panic attacks, constant anxiety. I had allergies to the environment, so just like pollen seasonally as well as mold. I also was down to about 30 foods that I could eat without having a reaction. And most of my reactions would just my heart would race. I would eat certain foods and it would just make my heart race or just cause my digestion to go crazy, and I'd get really bloated or really constipated. Food was a nightmare. I mean, I just felt like I didn't know what to eat. I mean, I literally had 30 foods that I was okay, these are my safe foods. So going out to eat, I would eat 2 bites. And then I would wait 20 to 30 minutes just to see if it caused a big reaction. And half the time I'd be in the car with my friends eating my to-go box if I passed the test, right? And so I just was so much anxiety around food.
It's just no way to live, is it?
Oh, it was horrible. And I was overweight and I was just extremely uncomfortable, and I just didn't know what to do. And I would go to my doctor and my eyes would be swollen, my nose would be running, and I had sores on my nose, and I was literally miserable. I had rashes and everything. And I'd go to my doctor and she would do my blood test and she's like, you're healthy. You're totally healthy. You're great. And I was just are you freaking kidding me? One day I went to my doctor and she was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to write you a prescription. You're not going to take it. I actually don't think it's going to do anything anyways. So what are you doing here? She's like, you know more about this than I do. And I was working with, I was actually working with all of her patients, helping them with their diets and helping them figure out stuff. I just was this complex case. For some reason, I just couldn't get to the bottom of some of what was going on for me. And I was taking herbs for everything. I was taking herbs for my liver to help clean up the skin issues, and for the allergies. I was taking herbs for my anxiety and herbs for my digestion, and just everything. And this was before you could just go research any of this stuff and find out that maybe the gut was the connection. And that's really how I got started in this work. I came across Donna Gates' work and Sally Fallon's work and realized maybe it is the gut. Maybe the gut could be the connection here. And I actually connected with a naturopath who was traveling through town, and she did a presentation on probiotics. And I started taking some probiotics, and they helped me a ton. And I'd taken antibiotics 3 to 5 times a year most of my life. So my microbiome was wiped out. And the work with the probiotics that she recommended, that really helped. And then I asked myself, because I was an herbalist, I'm a purist. I'm okay, so what is the whole food form of probiotics? How did my ancestors take this? Because I know they weren't taking these pills that were made in a lab. 1,000 years ago, that's not what my ancestors did. So how did they get probiotics in? And that's when I did come across Sally Fallon's work, where she talks about how people have been fermenting foods for a really long time. And I was like, oh, that's it. So I started making sauerkraut on a regular basis. And then I started fermenting everything. I actually started a sauerkraut company at the time and just went totally crazy, all in, because I noticed such good effects from it.
Stories like Summer's are so common, and you'll hear more like this as we move through the series. As I interviewed the 24 experts that contributed to The Shift, it was amazing to hear their own personal stories as well as that of their patients too. Here we have integrative doctor Dr. Leo Galland with a couple of great ones.
Okay, here's a story. I was consulted by the parents of a child. They live on the West Coast, and I see people from all over, not just the New York area. And the child had severe behavioral problems, as well as gastrointestinal problems. And the doctors who were treating him wanted to put him on antipsychotic drugs. And the parents were really freaked out at this. And so they brought him in to see me. And it was pretty clear to me that the GI problems had something to do with the mental problems. And in fact, the kid had celiac disease. And a gluten-free diet totally cleared both of those. It's that kind of simple solution. I saw a young man in his 30s who had developed severe bladder problems, and that were totally ruining his life. He had to urinate, he had pain, had to urinate like every few minutes. He'd seen a lot of urologists, had researched everything online, couldn't get any solutions, taken a lot of drugs which hadn't worked. What I recognized from the information he gave me about his diet and foods, and he was trying to be very healthy with his diet, was that he was actually sensitive to oxalates in food. That's the reason that he got worse the healthier he tried to be, because a lot of the healthiest foods are high oxalate foods, oxalic acid being a chemical that's found in a number of different vegetables. And going on a low oxalate diet totally cured his problem. Now, that's not a great long-term solution, because low oxalate diet is not really a healthy diet for life. But there are bacteria in the gut that can degrade oxalate and make it possible for you to consume them. And so he underwent a fecal transplant procedure, repopulated his gut with different bacteria, and his oxalate sensitivity cleared. And that actually relates to one of the important discoveries that I made going back to my time in New Haven at Gazelle. First of all, I realized that a lot of my colleagues at that time were doing intravenous therapies, nutritional therapies for patients. I realized that I didn't need to do that if I focused on fixing the gut first. And I also came to realize the importance of microbes. And the weakness in all of the traditional and ancestral medical systems is that they didn't know about microbes. They didn't have microscopes. They didn't have cultures. They knew something about worms that you could see, but that was the extent of it. And I recognized that microbes were important from two perspectives in chronically ill patients. The first perspective is what I'll call stealth infections. That is, there are a lot of people who are chronically ill who are suffering from a dysfunctional immune response being triggered by a microbe. It might be bacteria, it might be parasites, it might be yeast. And at first I focused on yeasts and intestinal protozoan parasites that had not been detected and were not being suspected as causes of problems. And I saw amazing results in so many patients by dealing with their health problems from that perspective. There is a microbe here that is triggering a dysfunctional immune response and maybe a metabolic response. And we have to really deal with the microbe. It's an interloper that's interfering with this person's ability to establish balance. As I started to look at the bacteria, what I realized, and we're going back about 30 years or so now, was the importance for normal, healthy bacteria for establishing balance, not only in the gut, but in the immune system and in the nervous system. So long before the term microbiome had been invented, I was studying the microbiome and trying to apply insights about the microbiome to the care of patients. And I reviewed a lot of old medical literature on gut bacteria and what they did and how they impacted on health and on response to treatments. And back in maybe 1991 or so, I actually gave a full-day workshop for physicians on intestinal dysbiosis and what it means and how it can be identified and what to do about it. And I developed classifications and concepts of dysbiosis.
Dr. Leo Galland really is one of the pioneers in this area, and you're going to love hearing from him more later in the series. Another person I loved interviewing was Dr. William Davis, cardiologist and author of Wheat Belly. Dr. William is so passionate and has some very powerful messages, although they can sometimes be confronting. I asked him if he could share his own personal health story.
Katherine, it's terrible to tell you that I have had virtually everything. I was a type 2 diabetic. I had irritable bowel syndrome. I had eczema. I had fatigue, overweight, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, small LDL. I mean, you name it, I had it. SIBO. But it also illustrated to me how powerful it is to correct these things with no medication, without a conventional doctor telling you need Prilosec or Lipitor, that you have astounding control over. Not to say there aren't unexpected health, of course there are, but they're in the minority. The vast majority of modern health conditions are completely reversible with natural, everyday means. I think it started when I made myself a type 2 diabetic. This is about 3 years ago or so, maybe 25 years ago. And I heard Dr. Dean Ornish speak. He's the guy who claims to have reversed heart disease with a vegetarian low-fat diet. And by the way, that's nonsense. He did not. He misinterpreted his data. He used a flawed method of tracking atherosclerosis. So he thought at the time, and I bought it at first, that he claimed to have reversed heart disease. And I heard him speak in Atlanta at the American College of Cardiology meetings. So I thought, I'm going to try that myself. I'm going to become a vegetarian, super low fat, so no added oils, no meats. And I gained 30 pounds. My triglycerides went as high as 390. My HDL dropped to 27. And I had fasting blood sugars in the 160 range. I became a type 2 diabetic, being vegetarian and low fat. It illustrated to me just how wrong you can go in diet, how far off course you can go. And I was jogging, by the way, 3, 4, 5 miles a day. And I became a diabetic and had all these problems, and hypertension, by the way. So it illustrated to me how awful health can get by doing the wrong thing, by doing such things as becoming vegetarian or going low fat. So I stopped doing all the things, and I started to explore what exactly was wrong with that lifestyle, why you shouldn't cut fat, why including animal products is essential for this carnivorous species called Homo sapiens, etc. Now I'm no longer diabetic. I don't have irritable bowel syndrome. I don't have eczema. I have a triglyceride level in the 40s. My HDL went from 27 to good, went from 27 to 94, which is supposed to be impossible. For many years, I consulted in what's called complex hyperlipidemias. These are complex disorders of cholesterol values. I consulted for years on people who had HDLs of 10, triglycerides of 2,000, and weird things like that. And it became clear that people have astounding control over those factors, and it doesn't involve drugs.
When we're trying to make a shift in our lives, all it can take is one small thing to set us in the right direction. Perhaps for someone you know, it could be listening to this podcast. My hope is to get this into as many ears as possible. So if you know somebody that's stuck and needs to make a shift, why not send them this podcast? It could be the one thing that sets them in the right direction.
The Shift!
As a naturopath, of course I'm going to be an advocate for healing through diet and lifestyle. One of the surprises that I got, though, from interviewing the experts was that more and more doctors were beginning to do the same. We're seeing more doctors move into a functional or integrative model as a result of the dissatisfaction with the medical model they're operating in. The tricky thing is, a lot of people with gut symptoms don't actually have a diagnosable disease. Rather, they have a collection of bothersome symptoms that don't have many treatment options available from mainstream health. What is really surprising is just how many symptoms people can have concurrently. It amazes me how often I have a patient who has dozens of symptoms and isn't aware that they're connected. If you have multi-system things going on, you're not just unlucky. One thing leads to another, which leads to another, and before you know it, there's so much going on that you don't even know where to start. This was the case for Katie, who had over 20 different symptoms when she began her membership with us at Shift. You'll hear from Katie more as we move through the series, but here are some of the things that bothered her the most.
Bowel regulation was
horrible. So like really loose stool, or I'd be constipated. There was sort of no in between. I would wee like so many times a day. Like I'm talking every 40 minutes. I would wake up probably 3 to 4 times a night to go for a wee. I would have really broken sleeps, not just from needing to go to the toilet. It would be, I'd just wake up and I would feel awake. When I would get up, there was no motivation for the day. There was no motivation for doing anything. Everything just sort of felt like I was trapped in this world that was controlling me. So then I would have massive bouts of depression, literally extreme crippling anxiety at this point. So I would start to get little bouts of panic attacks. Couldn't go to anything social-wise. So it was massive amounts of anxiety towards going to the shop, even, just to do really, really basic things. Chronic fatigue was still massive at this point. I would come home from work and I would sleep for 3 hours in the afternoon, and that was just a normal thing for me. Massive amounts of bloating every time I ate anything. I was always thirsty, and probably the biggest thing for me at the time was my brain just could not function. I honestly felt like most of the time I was in this massive fog, and I also just felt like the way I used to explain it to my best friend was I was in a room and there was a chair and that was my brain and that was it. Nothing else was going on in there. Nothing else was working. Nothing else could enter and nothing could leave. And it just felt empty and foggy and dark.
My mission is to help as many people as I can to move out of stories like this, out of their own personal pain points so they can get back to living their lives. As we move through this series, I want to help you make a shift personally. We each have a story and a journey we're currently on. Each of you will be at a different stage, but I know that no matter what it is, you'll get something as a result of listening to this series. I want to introduce the amazing Kate Reardon, who is a naturopath and healer you'll hear from throughout the series around the areas of personal empowerment and emotional health.
The thing that really excites me is the impact it has on the world. It's like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And I've seen this time and time again in my life. The more emphasis I put on my gut health, my emotional health, take better care of myself, that has such a repercussion in such a positive way in the world. I'm a better mother, I'm a better friend, daughter, wife, all the roles that I play. The more that I can give to me, the more that I can give to the world. And then that ripple effect is massive. And that's what really, really excites me about the shift and what you're creating. It's that, yes, we can do this for ourselves and we can inspire others, but we're also really transforming the state of the world. And that's what gets me up in the morning. And I think knowing that it all starts with us, it's not a scary burden. It's actually a really empowered state of being. Also, why this work is so important, not just for us, but for the generations to come, the generations of being, and the state of the planet.
The shift is really about helping you to make a change in your life. As we go on this journey together over the next 12 episodes, my intention is for you to get inspired and motivated to take action and make a shift in your own life. Thank you so much for joining me. So how do you make a shift? In the next episode, we're going to explore what it takes to make a shift. Sometimes change isn't easy, but there is a recipe for success, and we'll be discussing that in the next episode.
Coming up on The Shift.
Made a big shift in how I looked at what being a healer and a doctor really meant.
Very threatening and damaging to the human gut microbiome.
I made a conscious decision that I would not let it destroy me, that would have no purpose.
I couldn't eat anything and I would get debilitating stomach aches, and I was like, what's the point?
You have to prepare your mind in order to make a paradigm shift.
By now, you might be beginning to wonder what the health of your gut is like. To find out more, take our free online assessment at theshiftclinic.com/quiz. It only takes 5 minutes and you'll get a great report with some suggestions to get you started.
The Shift!
This series is produced by Must Amplify. Hosted by Katherine Maslen. Executive producer Ronsley Vaz. Music and sound design by Shade Furlong. Thank you to all of our experts. For more details on them, go to theshiftclinic.com/gut.
Still listening? How we feel colours our days. If we're emotional, anxious, low, or have low self-esteem, it severely impacts on our lives. In Season 2 of The Shift, we'll explore our minds, the neurochemistry, the biology, the emotions, and the subconscious. You don't want to miss this, so be sure to subscribe so that you know when it drops.
The Shift!
Thank you for listening.
Every listen or download of this show
And hence this voice.
Directly funds the ending of sex
and human trafficking.
A voice for a voice.
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 Find out more at
Amplify
Amplify
Impacts.com.
Impact.com.